I've gotten requests from several folks in the comments to do a video on the Bell Witch, the Tennessee Bell Witch, and the Bell Witch Cave. I already know a little bit about it. I've read a few posts about it and watched around 8 YouTube videos that featured it. I also loved the TV series Cursed, the Bell Witch, and I highly recommend the movie An American Haunting. It's got Sissy Spacek and Donald Sutherland playing the parts of the Bell family. It's a creepy period movie. You know what I mean. Well, I guess I know more than a little bit. Honestly, I'm downplaying my previous knowledge of the Bell Witch story. I already know quite a bit. I just forgot some of the details. The Bell Witch Chronicle is a report of one of the most terrifying and fascinating legends in American history. For over 200 years, the accounts of the Bell family's encounter with a malevolent spirit have captured the imaginations of people around the world. The story has been featured in countless forms of media. But what really happened in that small town in Tennessee? Did the Bell Witch really exist? Or is it just a work of fiction? In this episode, we'll explore the history, the downright terrifying encounters, and the mysteries behind the Bell Witch. I'm going to dig deep into the legend and examine the evidence to separate fact from fiction. So hang on tight and get ready for a bone-chilling expedition into the heart of one of America's most haunting ghost stories. I'm going to tell you a version of this story that not many have told. This story starts out and centers around John Bell. John was born in Edgecombe County, North Carolina in 1750. He was an apprentice barrel maker in his younger years and eventually took up farming as a career path later on. John met Kate Batts in Halifax, North Carolina in 1774 and soon fell in love. Shortly after, he proposed to Kate but didn't follow through with the marriage. Some folks say he saw Kate's true nature and realized he couldn't spend the rest of his life with someone as crazy, moody, and vindictive as she was. I guess the test drive didn't go so well. In 1780, Kate Batts' lifeless body was found near a well next to her home. She was said to have died of natural causes. Less than a year later, he met Lucy Williams and they both fell deeply in love with each other. In 1782, they got married and settled on the farm John had already owned. John was 32 years old. Lucy was 12. Some folks frowned on the marriage. I wonder why. However, the Bells did very well for themselves over the next 8 years. They had 6 kids and became one of the most successful farmers in the area. 6 kids in 8 years? He must have really been planting the seed. At that time, the Tennessee Territory had just opened up for settlement. John had heard through the grapevine how rich the soil was and was perfect for farming. Convinced this would be a very prosperous move, he and his family packed their things and made the perilous journey over the Smoky Mountains and into eastern Tennessee. Along the way, he spoke with other settlers who told him the Red River area would be ideal to homestead. Its close proximity to the Cumberland River for transportation of goods and supplies, along with the very rich land, made the choice pretty simple. In 1805, they arrived in present-day Adams, Tennessee. John received a government land grant for the development of 320 acres in Robertson County, Tennessee. He built a log cabin for himself and his family. They started farming the land and were extremely successful. The whole family lived a peaceful, happy life for 13 years, during which John became a deacon at the Red River Baptist Church. In 1817, while John was out hunting, he encountered a black dog. This was no ordinary dog. It had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit, like a jackalope. It was growling menacingly and had bright red glowing eyes. It stood only 15 feet from John. Being a pretty good marksman, John figured this to be an easy kill. He took aim and fired. Unbelievably, it appeared he missed. Sights must be off. The strange-looking creature stood there and continued growling, showing more of its teeth. John frantically reloaded and fired again. This time, the dog-like critter had vanished into thin air without making a sound. Simply unable to process what he just witnessed, he ran back into the cabin. Later that night, during dinner, the family heard pounding noises on the outer walls of the cabin. John and his sons jumped up and ran outside to catch the culprit, but no one was there. This continued for several days, each day getting louder and louder, and each time the boys would run outside and find no one. Someone's really good at ding-dong ditch. One day, John's youngest daughter, Betsy, was outside playing and saw a little girl in a green dress swinging on a limb of an oak tree. Dean, a man enslaved by the family, told of a large black dog with 2 heads following him every evening when he went to visit his wife. Dean admitted that he started carrying a witch ball that his wife had made to protect him from the creature. As time went on, the activity increased. The children would wake up in the middle of the night, frightened by the vibration and sound of rats gnawing on their bedposts. That'd be like ASMR to me. However, no rats were ever found in their house, and no damage was done to their bedposts. Shortly after that, it compounded even more. Along with the pounding on the walls and the grinding of the bedposts, the sheets would be ripped off the children in the middle of the night, along with their pillows violently thrown onto the floor by some unknown force. This was followed by the sounds of chains being dragged across the floor and unseen dogs ferociously fighting outside the house. Nevertheless, no chains were found and the family dogs were asleep by the fireplace. This continued nearly every night for several weeks. As time progressed, the family began hearing faint whispering. However, it was too soft to hear what they were saying. Some of the children said it sounded like a woman singing hymns. This is when things took a darker turn. This is where shit starts getting real. The encounters escalated and turned physical. John and Betsy, his youngest daughter, would suffer the brunt of the brutal attacks. Betsy was tortured for several years of her childhood. She would wake up from being slapped with dark red handprints across her face. Her arms and legs would have deep scratches to the point of bleeding. Her hair would be ripped out of her head from the roots in big clumps as she tried to sleep. She would also waken to the feeling of being pricked by a needle all over her body, with bloody pinpricks to prove it. She was even seen by her mother levitating above her bed while she slept. That's some straight up exorcist shit there. John suffered spells of his throat swelling to where it felt like a stick was stuck sideways in his throat. His mouth was paralyzed and he couldn't move it. His face started twitching uncontrollably. As this continued, John started getting weaker and weaker. Seeking some validation for what they were experiencing, John invited his friend and neighbor, James Johnston, along with his wife, to come over and spend the night and just confirm what was happening. James was a skeptic, but decided to humor John, and he and his wife came over. I think James is in for a rude awakening. Literally. Things started out peacefully, but once they went to bed, shit hit the fan. Not only did they hear the sounds John spoke of, they also clearly heard hymns. They even heard a voice, clear as day, echo through the Tennessee air, say, "Witch, witch, 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 witch." Minutes after that, the covers were yanked off their bed, and James was slapped hard in the face. He sprang out of bed and hollered, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" He got no response. On the plus side, if that's even possible at this point, nothing else happened the rest of the night. The next morning, James advised John that the culprit was an evil spirit, the kind the Bible talks about. Demonic? The entity's voice strengthened over time and became loud and unmistakable. It constantly directed insults and threats at John Bell. It sang hymns, quoted scripture, carried on intelligent conversations with different members of the family, and once even quoted word for word 2 sermons that were preached at the same time on the same day in 2 different churches, 13 miles apart. So it was in 2 different places at the same time? When asked about who or what it was, it responded, "I am the spirit. I was once happy, but I have been disturbed and made unhappy." Some of the families, nearby neighbors, and friends experienced unusual encounters with the witch as well. One incident involved a family friend named William Porter. He was visiting the Bell family and had retired to the bedroom for the night. As he lay down, he heard a scratching sound on the floor. He looked around but saw nothing. Then he heard the sound of someone walking across the room. But again, he saw nothing. Suddenly, he felt a cold hand grab his foot and pull on it. Porter struggled to free himself, but couldn't. He then heard the voice of the Bell Witch say, "I will teach you a lesson." As adrenaline surged through his veins, Porter became enraged. He threw the cover over the witch and grabbed the entity by the neck, then attempted to throw the invisible entity into the fire. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful as the massive weight and the terrible odor of the witch was too much for him to bear. After this encounter, Porter never returned to the Bell farm again. The news of the witch was now out in the open. Folks had heard of the encounters from miles around. General Andrew Jackson had also heard about the Bell Witch and was intrigued. 3 of John Bell's sons had served with General Jackson in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and the War of 1812. On top of that, the Bell's property was very near to some property Jackson owned. General Jackson decided to take an unscheduled trip to the Bell farm. So it was a personal trip. According to the Tennessee State Library and Archives, General Jackson brought several of his troops, along with a wagon loaded with tents and supplies they would need to stay overnight outside the haunted home, and left for Red River. Dude, you don't know what you're getting into. As the group crossed the Bell's property line, the horses abruptly stopped. None of the horses moved. Those being ridden stopped mid-stride, frozen in place. The pack horses came to a halt, and the wagon stopped as if the brake was on. The wheels wouldn't budge like they were glued to the ground. The poor horses couldn't be coaxed into moving, no matter what the soldiers did. They didn't even flinch. Jackson declared the Bell Witch must be responsible for this. As Jackson turned towards his soldiers, they heard a weird, cackling laugh bouncing off the hills. Then a wispy voice said, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I'll see you again tonight. At that time, the horses unfroze and the wheels on the wagon became free and started moving again. I'd call that a supernatural shot across the bow. The group continued on to the Bell home. They were greeted by the family and set up camp for the night in front of the cabin. A large meal was prepared, and the atmosphere was very party-like a hurricane party. One of the attendees boasted he was a witch hunter. He claimed to have gotten rid of several evil spirits with a silver bullet as he proudly brandished his pistol. Jackson was perturbed by the man's constant bragging and stated, "I bet this fellow was an arrant coward. By the Eternal, I do wish the thing would come. I want to see him run." The troop heard faint footsteps and an elderly female voice say, "All right, General. I am here and ready for business." The voice dared the witch hunter to fire. The witch hunter attempted to shoot in the direction of the voice, but his pistol wouldn't fire. He nervously tried again. That's a Darwinian moment there, soldier. Suddenly, the braggart started dancing around in pain. He exclaimed it felt like a 1,000 needles pricking his body all over. His face looked straight up. His body lifted slightly, and he started to be dragged off by his nose as the witch's cackles echoed over the hills. After a little ways, he was released, and he ran screaming into the darkness. The soldiers became deadly silent. The witch loudly stated, "The devil has run into the night. He was a cowardly man. Stick around tomorrow night, General Jackson, and I will expose yet another coward." Jackson said to his soldiers, "This is quite amusing. I haven't had so much fun since we battled the Redcoats." I bet you he would have loved watching wrestling. Ooh, yeah. The following morning, several of Jackson's men claimed to have been pinched so hard during the night they were bruised. Others said pins stuck them. They all showed evidence of the abuse. The fun was over, and Jackson was quoted as saying, "I would rather fight the British in New Orleans than spend another night in the company of the Bell Witch." Jackson urged his men to pack the tents and supplies quickly, and they made a hasty retreat off the Bell property. The evil spirit continued to harass the family. Now emboldened by the retreat of General Jackson and his troops, the witch increased the intensity of her encounters. The family started seeing clear apparitions around the house, and choking sounds were heard in the middle of the night. The witch divulged that she wouldn't leave the family alone until John Bell was dead and Betsy broke off her relationship with her fiance, Joshua Gardner. Fuck, she's got issues. John's twitching got worse. His condition progressed to constant migraines, tingling sensations all over his body, constant fatigue, and uncontrollable seizures. In October 1820, Bell was struck with an illness while walking to the pig pen on his farm. Some believe that he suffered from a stroke, since after that he had difficulties speaking and swallowing. Did he start smelling burnt toast though? In and out of bed for several weeks, his health continued to decline. The malicious entity threw off his shoes every time he tried to get up and walk, and slapped his face when he began to recover from his numerous seizures. How dare you start to feel better? Her shrill voice was heard all over the place, cursing and chastising John. Feeling she had him right where she wanted him, the witch finally revealed who she really was. She told John she was Kate Batts, his former lover he was supposed to marry many years ago in Virginia. She told him she wouldn't rest because he had poisoned her by the well beside her house and left her there to rot. Her vengeance ran deep as she followed him all the way to Red River. Yeah, that kind of shit'll get you haunted, all right. On the morning of December 19, he failed to get up at his regular time. When the family noticed he was sleeping much longer than normal, they tried to wake him. They discovered Bell was in a trance-like state, a coma, and couldn't be awakened. John Jr. went to the medicine cabinet to get his dad's medicine and noticed it was gone. However, a strange vial, half filled with a dark liquid, was in its place. No one claimed to have replaced the medicine with the vial, of course. A doctor was summoned to the house. The doctor said it seemed he had been poisoned. John Bell Jr. wanted to find out if that was true, and to test it, he gave a few drops of the liquid to a stray cat. In only a few seconds, the cat collapsed, dead on the floor. The entity then exclaimed, "I gave old Jack a big old dose of that last night, which fixed him." Furious, John Jr. threw the mysterious vial into the fireplace. It shattered, burst into a bright blue flame, and shot up the chimney. The next day, he was pronounced dead. John Bell's funeral was one of the largest ever held in Robertson County, Tennessee. Lots of folks attended from miles away, and 3 preachers eulogized him. Toward the end of his funeral, several mourners could hear the witch happily singing bawdy drinking songs, like proverbially dancing on his grave. This continued until the last mourner had left the cemetery. In 1821, after his death, Betsy and Joshua could not go to the river, the cornfields, or the cave without the entity nagging them. The constant pressure was more than Betsy Bell could handle, and on Easter of 1821, after much consideration and prodding by the witch, she met Joshua at the river and tearfully broke off their engagement. When she did, the disturbances around the house stopped. Betsy was no longer tormented by the witch after that. So, did this crazy shit really happen? Well, yes and no. The story of the Bell family is absolutely true. John, Lucy, and their kids moving from North Carolina to Tennessee and setting up a homestead, that really happened. It's when you get into the haunting part that things start getting a little into the gray area. Typical. A few rational explanations of the Bell Witch phenomena have been offered over the years. Here we go. The haunting, some say, was a hoax executed by Richard Powell, the school teacher of Betsy Bell and Joshua Gardner. It seems Powell was deeply in love with the young Betsy and would do anything to destroy her relationship with Gardner. Powell was a known ventriloquist And through a variety of pranks, tricks, and with the help of several accomplices, it's rumored that Powell created all the effects of the ghost to scare Gardner away. Of course, there's no proof of that, and there's been no explanation of how Powell achieved stopping Andrew Jackson's wagon and horses mid-stride, or got John's shoes to fly off when he was about to get up. Not to mention all the mysterious physical harm done to Betsy. Nevertheless, Powell did come out the winner. He ended up marrying Betsy. I'm assuming he never admitted to Betsy what he did then. But what about John Bell's death? John Bell most likely died of arsenic poisoning. Arsenic is a heavy metal and has a blue flame when burned. Arsenic poisoning was so prevalent in that time period, a state law was enacted specifically for arsenic poisoning. It was also very commonly used as a rat poison during the 1800s. However, rats weren't a big issue for the Bell family on their farm, so arsenic really wouldn't have been needed. Some say that an angry enslaved person gave John the arsenic. If so, why did they put the vial of poison in the medicine cabinet after they poisoned him and remove the actual medicine? See, that shit just doesn't make any sense. Well, how about this theory? The witch switched out John's medicine bottle for a vial of poison, or the witch transformed the liquid from medicine to poison, and whoever gave John his medicine unwittingly killed him. In 1828, Kate, the witch, returned promising to visit John's most direct descendant in 107 years. The descendant would have been Charles Bell, a prominent physician in Nashville. Charles was the one who researched and discovered what John died of. The affliction was named Bell's palsy. Charles Bell died in 1945 without ever admitting if the Bell witch had paid him a visit or not. She probably did. He just didn't say anything for fear of ridicule and damage to his reputation. As time passed, the legend of the Bell Witch only grew stronger. The mysterious and malevolent spirit continued to haunt the Bell family and their Tennessee farm long after their deaths, and stories of its supernatural powers became a staple of local folklore. Despite numerous attempts by skeptics and paranormal investigators to explain the strange events that took place at the Bell farm, the truth behind the Bell Witch remains shrouded in mystery. Some believe that the spirit was the vengeful ghost of a woman who was wronged by the Bell family. Very probable. While others speculate that it was an otherworldly being sent to torment the family for farming on an Indian burial mound. It always seems to go back to that, doesn't it? Regardless of its origins, the Bell Witch has left an indelible mark on American culture and has become a symbol of the strange and inexplicable. From movies and books to TV shows and podcasts, the legend of the Bell Witch lives on, captivating and frightening audiences to this day. And yet, among the fear and uncertainty, there is also a sense of wonder and fascination. For as much as we fear the unknown, there is a part of us that is drawn to it because it's fun to have the shit scared out of you. We all want to unravel the mysteries of the universe and understand the forces that shape our world. So perhaps, in a way, the Bell Witch is a reminder of that eternal human curiosity, a symbol of our endless quest to explore the unknown and unlock the secrets of the cosmos. And as long as we continue to search for answers, the legacy of the Bell Witch will endure, haunting us with its mysteries and inspiring us with its amazement.